Okay, I think now we are on the air. Well, okay, today we're going to have a very nice talk on the air of Professor Markku. Let me talk to you how I sound your name. Sorry. Markku Hannulla.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So he is professor of mathematics education at the Department of Educational Science at the University of Helsinki in Finland. He's a very prolific researcher. He has lots of papers and chapters in books, and it's always related with mathematical education, mathematical learning. And today he's going to talk about the role of students' emotions in mathematics learning. The subject that he has several very interesting, very cited articles. So, Professor Markku Hannulla, thank you for being with us, and we are going to gather the questions from the YouTube, and as soon as I have some questions important, I will interrupt you, but please give us your talk.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you for the nice introduction. So I hope you are active in asking questions at the YouTube. I had a bit difficulty finding kind of relating what kind of audience is today going to be. So some of my talk may not reveal the kind of things that you are really interested in, but I'm really willing to answer any questions within this area of different affective factors in mathematics education. So emotions, beliefs, and things like that. Identity. If you have specific interest on some of these, so you might ask some more focused questions from what I'm presenting. So I'm not very familiar with using Google Meet, so let's see how I managed to get the presentation running. So I put this here, and I should now put this on the front. So I think you should now be seeing my presentation.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so greetings from Finland, University of Helsinki. That's where I've been working recent years of my career. So I've been to some other universities earlier, but this is where I've been working for quite a while now. I'm going to talk about how affect is a key element to mathematical competence and powerful teaching, and that's quite briefly done. I'm going to talk about emotions and problem solving. I'm going to talk about emotions in the class. I'm going to talk about development of attitudes or beliefs, a bit depending how you define it, but today I decided to call it attitudes. And actually I missed one bullet point here. It's going to be the last one where I talk about the kind of meta-theoretical framework. That's where I kind of work about how different concepts within this area are related to each other. Different concepts, different theories, and different findings, how they are related to each other. So it's going to be one more there. So I'm going to present first two kind of overarching frameworks about. Actually, I realized I don't have time on the screen, so I'm finding my clock here, so I know how I'm doing with the time. So here is first a general definition of what is mathematical competency. And Jeremy Kilpatrick has been using this kind of model where he kind of metaphorically compares mathematical competencies to a rope that has different strands. So when you have the strands tied together and each of the strands is strong, they together form a rope that is much stronger than any of the strands alone. So he identified five different important strands for being mathematically proficient. So one is adaptive reasoning, the other one is strategic competence, then there's conceptual understanding, there's productive disposition and procedural fluency. Very often mathematics educators, so practitioners, focus on procedural fluency and conceptual understanding, and there's less focus on the other three. And I'm here just highlighting the productive disposition, which is in the area of affect. So that's the inclination that makes a student or anyone using mathematics an inclination to see mathematics as sensible, useful, and worthwhile. And it includes also a belief about hard work, making progress, or hard work being the path to make progress, and self-efficacy beliefs, having confidence in one's ability to do mathematics. So he's identifying it as very important, and it's quite understandable that even if a person is very competent in mathematics in other ways, but is not willing to engage in mathematical thinking and doesn't believe in own mathematizing competencies, then that person will not engage with mathematics and will not develop mathematically. So this is one starting point that kind of shows that in general frameworks about mathematics education, this affective domain, and in this Kilpatrick framework called disposition, is considered important. The other one is true math framework. So that's Alan Schoenfeld's research group, Teaching for Robust Understanding project. And they identify 5 dimensions that make classrooms powerful, mathematics classrooms powerful. They identify the content being appropriate, having high cognitive demand for the students, providing equitable access for the students. And then this is again related to the affective domain, that students feel agency, ownership, and have a positive identity in mathematics. And there's also formative assessment that is part of the powerful classroom. So their framework, which is based on empirical findings about classrooms that work well and have high outcomes, identify this affective domain as one of the 5 dimensions. So highlighting this part, developing their agency or willingness to engage with mathematics and their ownership over the content, so they feel that they are making progress, they are learning things, and they are having mathematical insights. And also that they have positive identity about themselves, and they are mathematical thinkers, they are learners. So these are part of the powerful classroom. Okay, so that would be a good point to maybe answer some questions, Samuel, if there are any questions at the moment in the YouTube. Is it
well, I can ask you to give us a little bit of the meaning of agency, because this is a word that we are not used very much here. So can you just explain a little bit what's the development of agency? You put that in parentheses, but you can develop it a little bit more.
Yeah, agency means it comes from the word agent, so the one who acts. So that's kind of highlighting that the student is seeing themselves as an active participant of the learning situation. So they are doing things. They are not just passively receiving things, but they are kind of they have the feeling that they are making decisions that are relevant for the learning development in the classroom. And one example of agency is that if students feel that the new content they are learning is something that is based on their insight about their own examination. So if they kind of can think of new ideas themselves, so that's the kind of thing that's related to agency. So being an active decision maker in the classroom. Is that enough?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk more about emotions and then move on to what emotions are in problem solving. So something that's, if you go and do research in emotions, so it's important to know that there are plenty of very different emotion theories. So I've identified there are three traditions that have influenced research. So one is from Darwinian, the evolutionary development of human species and emotions in humans and other animals. Then there's a Freudian tradition that's kind of relating emotions to the social relationships and love and caring and social different social roles within family and extending those models to other contexts. And then there's a cognitive tradition that looks at emotions as part of information processing. So they see emotions as information that is at the service of cognitive processes. So these three have quite different approaches to emotions, and the theories are sometimes a bit difficult to relate to each other. So that's a warning when you go, that you may find texts that are kind of coming to the same research question from very different directions and very different basic assumptions. So that may make reading the literature a bit challenging. Something that I think that all emotion theories, or at least almost every emotion theory agrees, that I've seen is that emotions include a physiological process that regulates the body. So emotions are more bodily than cognition in that sense. And emotions include an experience, so subjective experience that is regulating behavior. And there's some kind of expressive processes that regulate social coordination. So there's smiling or blushing or crying. Those are part of social communication and social coordination between participants. So these three things are something that everyone seems to include in their models. So I would say that something that comes in many theories that help me make sense of emotions is that emotions are closely related to personal goals. So emotions are often related to goal-directed activities. Achieving a goal or failing to achieve a goal that you want to achieve often are starting points for an emotion to be felt. Emotions definitely are important for human coping and adaptation. So sometimes in education, in the history, it was considered that emotions are peripheral to the learning situation and they are kind of less relevant than cognition. But I think when you look at the learning process, emotions are very important there for how humans behave in a classroom or some other learning environment. So emotions are important for how humans cope and adapt in those situations. And that's the last one actually is repetition, what I said before. So there's the physiological reaction, but I think here I'm emphasizing that it makes it different from pure cognition and purely information processing system. So there's a physiological reaction. So there's release of certain hormones related to emotions. There can be adrenaline, or there can be oxytocin, or some other hormones that are released in the biochemical processes as part of the emotion process. So that's the background in history, in research of emotions. In mathematical problem solving, and I'm here emphasizing that a problem in this sense is only when the solver does not know how to proceed. So there's not yet, the problem solver doesn't know yet what is the right strategy to approach, but they have to try it out and they have to learn it. So in problem solving from early on, there's been some discussion about how emotions are related to it. So already Poya and I couldn't find the first edition of the Poya how to solve it, but the 57 edition at least already has that determination and hope are things that he mentions in his book. How these are part of the heuristic processes, and also that in that book Poya mentions that to become a good problem solver, one has to become familiar with the emotions related to problem solving process. So a bit later in the 80s, and there was lots of research on problem solving in the 80s, and these are the key, very important researchers in this area: Mason, Burton, and Stacy, Schoenfeld, MacLeod, Goldin, and then also Kopp, Jäkel, and Wood. All had very important research on problem solving, and all they gave a significant role for affect in their analysis of mathematical problem solving. So as soon as there has been research on problem solving, people have been addressing also the importance of emotions as part of it. So the first part of that is that emotions are related to both positive and negative types of emotions. So there can be positive and negative emotions. And the important here is that both successful problem solvers and those problem solvers that fail may encounter either type. So even good problem solvers have negative emotions that influence the solution process, and even weak problem solvers have positive emotions that influence their solution process. And much of the research in problem solving and emotions focus on the importance of emotions as part of the self-regulation. So I think if you go into problem solving research, there's very much research on metacognition, and emotions work in the same way as metacognition in self-regulation of in problem solving process.
Professor, just a question a little bit before about the positive and negative emotions. You mentioned that sometimes it's both positive and negative emotions can help a problem solver. Can you give us an example?
Right. So a positive, I think it's quite easy to have the idea how a researcher, a problem solver tries something like a simple case, and is then finding an idea that seems powerful, and that gives them positive emotion, and they know that kind of encourages them to continue working with that idea. But in the same way, a negative emotion can be related if someone is trying a heuristic or strategy. Let's say someone starts to do a comprehensive list of alternatives in some problem and gets frustrated because the list is too long. So the negative emotion there is kind of giving them a signal that this is not a good strategy. I should maybe try some other approach that would be more powerful and helpful. I think that's enough on that.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and also emotions in general and emotions related to mathematics, what are the differences and what are the similarities?
I think it's like the emotions are related to situation and the goals. And I don't know if it's very fruitful to make a decision or distinction between emotions related to mathematics and to other things, but it's emotions in a mathematical situation, or if there are emotions in a situation that is not mathematical. Let's see if no, I don't have it here. There are some emotions that seem to be more typical for problem solving. And for mathematics, I think there is some specificity in that in mathematics, there's often this strong dichotomy that the solution is either wrong or right, and there's no gray area in between. And that's making maybe the emotions more pronounced in mathematical context than in some other contexts. So writing an essay is not that you're either wrong or you're right, but it's something that you're more likely in the gray area. Everyone could write a better essay if they can rewrite it again, or anyone's essay could be worse. So they are kind of on a continuum, whereas in mathematics it's either or. Dichotomous, binary situation that's kind of making the goal-directed emotions more kind of black and white in mathematical context than some other contexts. Okay, so the last point also relates to that. So whether one works with mathematics or something else, it should be reminded that learning or problem solving takes place by social beings, and in a complexity of learning environment where they have multiple goals. So they have also social goals, and they have goals not only related to the mathematical content, but also related a bit around it. So it can be that emotions are related to mathematics, but it can be also that emotions are related to teacher, to peers, and the social relationships in the classroom. Sorry, I have to take a short break. Something needs my attention here.
Just to everybody knows, I guess you need to put some fire on their fireplace.
Yeah, there was some charcoal was rolling out from the fireplace, so I had to take care of that. Not on the floor or all the way, but a bit off the fire, so I had to tend to that. Right. So I'm going to now, this is a good place to ask additional questions because I'm going to move on to slightly different thing now. But there's lots of research and lots of links to kind of a classic research about emotional states and problem solving, and here are links to that literature. Any questions, comments here so far in the YouTube?
No, you're fine.
Okay, so something I want to show here that's kind of related to coping and emotions is using humor. And there's this kind of tasks that our colleague Wim van Doren and also Verschaffel in the Leuven University, their research team has been examining how students solve this kind of word problems that have to be considered realistically. So here's an example of the task that they are using. When Calvin goes to school, Hobbes sometimes goes swimming. His record for 25 meters is 20 seconds. How fast can he swim 500 meters? And students tend to answer this kind of problems without thinking realistically. So if his record is 20 seconds for 25 meters, you can't just multiply it by 20 to get the 500 meters. He would get slower for longer distance. And they also found it takes a long intervention to make this change. So students are very straightforward with word problems. But they found out that if you just use some mathematical jokes before the task, it kind of opens students' minds to thinking realistically. So jokes like Calvin asks Hobbes, if I have 1 melon in one hand and 2 melons in the other hand, what do I have? And Hobbes answers, big and strong hands. And having these kind of jokes on the front page made students answer the mathematics tasks with more realistic consideration. Like the swimming task that I was presenting, if there are no jokes, less than 10% of students think realistically about it. But when the joke is included, 30% of students almost thinks realistically. There's also the person who is selling Christmas trees. There's a number of Christmas trees the person sells in December, something like 90 or was it 270 or something? 90, I think. And how many would he sell in January, February, and March altogether? Well, of course, you can't just multiply by 3 because there's definitely a season for Christmas trees in December. But anyway, you see that having this kind of humor opens up students' realistic considerations. So that relates to how problem solving includes a stage where you make a plan, where you apply heuristics, where you think of a strategy, or where you kind of chase the idea, basic idea. And that's something where having a relaxed and happy mood helps you being creative in that stage. And I think the use of jokes or humor is helpful in that part.
Is it necessary the jokes to be some kind of related to the problem solving, or any kind of joke? It's just the emotion that is important, or also the content of the joke is important?
Both are important. So, well, actually, I don't think they tried with any jokes that are completely outside of mathematics. So they use tasks that are related to mathematics in the sense that this example is. So it's a joke that seems like a mathematics task, but the answer is something that is considering the realistic constraints in the situation. Okay. So in the classroom, this is Copenhagen classic research about an after school problem solving group that met regularly, and having them solve problems. They found that children got really excited, jumping up and down, hugging each other, and rushing off to tell the teacher that they solved. That's something we want to see more in the classroom. And this is from our own research now that shows that lessons are not always engaging for the students. So this is a grade 5 Finnish student. And we had a data collection method. We asked them to just draw your mathematics class. And this is one of the students. And you can see some of them. A teacher is presenting a multiplication task on board. And the student who is marked as me is thinking boring, how can she keep going on? And other students, one student is looking at the time, other student is sleeping, another student is thinking of a hamburger. One thinks that he's going to die. One is thinking that nice computation, nice calculation. So really, there's no enthusiasm in this classroom. Quite the contrary.
Grade 5 is a pre-teenager age.
Yes, that would be pre-teenagers, 12-year-olds in Finnish system. And this is something that relates to what CIEspMat has been writing a lot about flow. And Peter Liljedahl has been using that in mathematics education. And this is a simplified model of the flow idea, but it's when the skill and challenge are in balance, student might encounter a moment of flow, having a deep engagement with what they are doing. And that's originally comes from sports. People might experience flow in sports when they are doing very well, but that's something that can happen also in problem solving. They get the same in-depth engagement with a task. And if the situation changes so that the skill is high and the challenge doesn't get stronger, they enter a boredom domain. They feel that everything they are doing is straightforward, it takes time and it doesn't excite, and they get bored. On the other hand, if the challenge grows too fast, so the challenge is too high with respect to the skill that students are having, they go into anxiety channel where they start feeling afraid and feeling very uncomfortable, and they start to worry about failing. And one of the powerful ideas that Liljedahl is doing is to, if a student has high agency, going back to what I was talking earlier about the agency, they can, and they are given an opportunity to raise the challenge themselves. So that's something that can happen with problem fields where you have related problems, or where you have an open problem where they can kind of increase the challenge within the task themselves. So if they are about to enter the boredom channel, they can move back to the flow channel with raising the challenge by themselves. Of course, it can be also done by the teacher, but for the teacher, it's more difficult to adjust and serve every student at the right moment. So Peter Liljedahl is working with building thinking classrooms. You can Google his work up. He's been very successful in developing interventions in mathematics teaching, or changing mathematics teaching classrooms in a way that provide more opportunities for flow and student engagement. So our intervention was a 3-year intervention from grade 3 to grade 5. So we had only one mathematics lesson per month that we had in the intervention. So it was not very intensive. And it was using open problems with multiple answers. And we found a positive effect on female students' self-confidence and enjoyment. So specifically for female students, it seemed to be more relevant. And we found also that the student drawings of their mathematics lessons indicated a lot of variation how students are experiencing and how different classrooms can be. So in some classrooms, it was very successful, tongue twister. In some classrooms, it was very successful. In some other classrooms, it was less successful. And the analysis we did was qualitative, but we found some difference in the social engagement being different in the successful and less successful classrooms. But what we saw in the successful classrooms, at the end of the intervention were feelings like this. People are helping each other. Teacher is helping a student, and there are two students talking about mathematics, and another student comes to their group asking, could one of you help me? And I'm here highlighting how they seem to be very happy students. They enjoy being in the classroom talking about mathematics. And this is the building thinking classroom that Peter Liljedahl has been working on. And I think there are lots of things related to emotion as well, and social collaboration. So emotions, I have to remind me that emotions are not only related to problem solving, but they're also related to social relations. So building thinking classrooms kind of tackles both of these at the same time. They engage students with problem solving activities in a way that allows them to relate socially with other students. Okay, I think this would be a good place to take additional questions.
Yes, the last slide, you mentioned the difference between the female attitude and the male, and the implementation was the flow framework, right? I mean, you build the skills when they start to get bored, and then we increase the challenge. But also, I guess, okay. If it was too high, the excitement, you have to go back a little bit to build the skills. And then you have a positive effect more in female students. And is it common, or is there an explanation for that?
We don't have an explanation for that, but I think your question is very good because it allows me to clarify something. So when we were developing the intervention, we were not thinking within the flow framework. We were thinking about open-ended problems and how that allows more positive emotions to appear. We also thought that we want to have the intervention so that students are working with other students, so there's the social component. And it's only afterwards that I've been thinking that this is a way that they are possibly entering the flow channel. So open problems with multiple answers allow students to adjust themselves. So an open problem, it could be, for example, something very simple like two numbers are computed and the result is 10. What are the two numbers? And some can be starting it very simple. Okay, it's 5 plus 5. It's 2 times 5. But some other students may challenge themselves and work with more complex computations. So it could be square root of 10 to the second power. Or it could be 5 times square root of 2 to the second power, or some other more complex computation. So an open task allows students to adjust the challenge themselves. Not always, but most of the cases in the open problem, there is possibility to develop a more refined or more sophisticated solution, and that's then raising the challenge. Why this is more pronounced with female students, we don't have a clear answer. I think one of the things that is related to that is that female students tend to have their attitude deteriorate earlier than male students. So grade 3 students generally are positive about mathematics, about themselves as mathematics learners. And grade 5, there are some girls that start to be falling into a negative attitude about mathematics. But for boys, this decline in attitude happens later. So these are all related to the Finnish context. So it might be related that this intervention prevents this development that is happening generally during the school years. And the reason it has an effect on female students is because the male students don't have that deterioration going on that early in their school year. So for them, it comes a bit later when they enter teenage years.
Okay. Thank you.
So now I'm going to move on to a very different approach to research on emotions. So this is something that has their roots in social psychology, and there's this research on attitudes had the kind of idea to explain something that how larger populations work and react. And that research tradition has developed the survey methodology, and that has been used a lot in research on mathematics attitudes. So research has confirmed quite strongly that students' disposition towards mathematics is related with the actual performance in mathematics, with different affective concepts. So anxiety has a negative correlation with performance. Attitude is correlated, so positive attitude is correlating with higher performance. Self-efficacy beliefs correlate positively. Motivation correlates positively. Intrinsic motivation is better than extrinsic motivation for performance. Mastery goal orientation is advantageous, and for performance goal orientation, there's mixed results. But anyway, there's lots of evidence that certain dispositions are correlating with actual performance. However, the direction of causality is much more difficult to confirm. It's quite reasonable to think that when students are successful in mathematics, they have expectations to be successful also in future. And this is influencing their disposition. They feel anxiety if they expect to fail, and they feel high self-efficacy if they expect to be successful. On the other hand, if a student has a disposition, it influences the determination, the kind of perseverance they have, how hard they work on something. And if they work hard, if they are determined, they are more likely to succeed. And that way they are more likely to learn new things because they don't give up so easily. So which of these is the dominant one, or are both of these at play? And research has found evidence for both ways. So there's different approaches with structural modeling of certain kind of a single data set. There's longitudinal studies, and the results seem to be mixed. So it seems that it's possibly influenced by student age and the country or culture they are in. So for some places it works differently than for some others. And based on this research, it seems that the relationship is reciprocal, so that changes in either will lead changes to the other. But now I'm going to present you something about our own research with the Finnish population, a nationally representative sample, something like 2,400. Anyway, it's big enough to make conclusions. And we had a longitudinal analysis where we had them doing mathematics tasks and having them fill surveys about math attitudes in grade 3, grade 6, and grade 9. And the basic thing we found in the data, of course, is that there seems to be this kind of stability. So if you achieve high in grade 3, you are more likely to achieve high in grade 6 and grade 9. If you have high self-efficacy, if you have a positive self-concept in grade 3, you're self-concept is likely to be positive on grade 6 and on grade 9. And if you enjoy doing mathematics, you're likely to enjoy doing it later as well. And here we found that for achievement, this was strongest. And interestingly, for self-concept, it became stronger when the students were growing older. So it seems that for the younger students, the self-concept was still malleable. It could be changed more easily. But when the students grow older, it becomes more difficult to change. And then we looked at the cross effects. And there we find from grade 3 to grade 6 that the early achievement influenced how their self-concept was developing. But the situation changed from grade 6 to grade 9. We found the same thing, that achievement in grade 6 influenced self-concept and also enjoyment in grade 9. But we also found quite similar strength for the other direction, that self-concept is influencing achievement. So we see it for the younger students, it seems to be from achievement to attitudes. And for adolescent students, it would be a reciprocal, both ways effect. Well, we looked at also on grade 12. So 3 years later, we were able to catch big part of the sample, and we were able to look at the longitudinal development for the secondary level. And this is interesting because until grade 9, everyone studies in the same path. So it's comprehensive education, everyone studies in the same schools in Finland. But after grade 9, they make choices. They can choose a vocational track or academic track. And if they choose the academic track, they can choose between advanced mathematics syllabus or basic syllabus. So the more challenging or easier one. If they take the vocational track, they can choose a vocational study that doesn't include mathematics, or they can choose a track that includes lots of mathematics in technical fields. And now the question is, how does it show in our research, how is affect related to achievement at this stage? How does it change when when students have freedom to choose? So the starting point was this for the cross-Lackey effect. What happens in the next stage? So first, think how it might change. Students are growing older and they have opportunity to choose what they do. What we saw in the data was the self-concept was primarily influencing how the achievement was developing and how they enjoyed mathematics. So having a confidence of own ability related to what they chose as their mathematics path, so whether they took more challenging mathematics, and that way their learning improved. So if you have low self-concept, if you don't think that you are a mathematics person, if you think you don't have a mathematical mind, when you have a chance to choose, you choose not to study mathematics, and then your achievement doesn't improve. And we actually saw in some very big groups that like those who study the academic track and take the minimum amount of mathematics, they actually don't learn anything new in the secondary grade. Their achievement level remains on the same on average. So some people are actually going down with their mathematics achievement over the 3 years. So they know less of mathematics than they did on grade 9. But it also influences their enjoyment. So while achievement is the key in the early years of school, influencing the development of self-concept, towards the older population, it changes that the self-concept is the driving force, influencing how the achievement is developing. And I think that's really nice and interesting development there. First from achievement to self-concept, then a reciprocal, and then from self-concept to achievement. I already spoke this part. So any questions about this?
Yes. First of all, you mentioned the PISA results and self-confidence efficacy, and also presented results of a study for this 3 and 6 and 9 grades, showing the impact of the early learning and the attitudes has given students as they become older. If we want to impact the future of the achievement in the future, is there any way for developing their self-confidence in math? Is the approach that the teachers should pay more attention to?
So there are lots of things that have been done in that sense, and one thing that at least seems very powerful is the growth mindset thing that has been very strong in the US context. So that's the idea that simply we teach our students that brain is like a muscle. If you use it a lot, it gets stronger. So I think that's specific to a US context, that there's lots of belief about inborn talent that is kind of detrimental to students in that sense that their self-concept is very fragile. If they fail even once, they start doubting their talent, and therefore they might go into the negative path and give up mathematics. But if you have this growth mindset, you realize that, okay, I failed this time. That means that I haven't trained my brain enough. I have to work harder to make the achievement better. And that's something also that when we compare with, especially with East Asian Confucian heritage countries and US and some other Western countries, there is this difference that in the Eastern Asian or Confucian heritage countries, there's strong belief in hard work as giving success, whereas in the West there is a bit more about this inborn talent kind of approach. And in a way, if you strongly believe that your achievement is based on talent, like if you believe in this kind of inborn talent, so working hard is kind of a proof that you are not talented. Because if you were talented, you would not have to work hard. And that's very detrimental to long-term development in learning. Another thing I might say there is that the students are generally very positive about mathematics at early grades. They're positive about everything, and that's in some sense that's very natural development, that people kind of identify their strengths and weaknesses based on the feedback they get on their achievement. So they identify, okay, this is a field I'm strong in, this is a field I'm weak in. And at least in the Finnish context, and I think it might apply for some other context, mathematics is generally a discipline where it's hardest to get high grades. So math teachers are the harshest teachers. They are very strict on what you have to do, and in a way they want to teach their students that no, you are not good enough in mathematics. And that's probably one of the reasons why in mathematics there's stronger decline in attitudes than in some other subjects. So the students feel that, get the message that, okay, I'm not good in mathematics. And in some other subjects the teachers may be a bit more positive in their evaluation, in their assessment, and students get more positive feedback. So maybe I'm more of a language person. That kind of thing influences it. Then there's, again, going back to what I was presenting earlier about the classroom. So you can make the classroom a place where students have opportunity to solve problems and have insight and agency, and you get these positive experiences of success, an experience of doing mathematics by yourself. That's also relating to what I was presenting in the true math framework in the beginning. And that's one additional way of promoting positive attitude. So there are several ways that you could kind of help that. I haven't seen many good interventions other than the growth mindset, but that definitely would be an interesting area of research. Like our study with grade 3 to grade 5 and using open problems, and then the building thinking classrooms that Mediador is working on, and then the growth mindset. All these are showing positive effects. So there's lots of things you can do with your learning environment that helps developing this path. But I think it's still open research question, what are the most powerful interventions?
And so, is it better to have a more open problem for the students to solve than a very right and wrong problems? Because if they have just right and wrong problems, if they get wrong, they're not building their self-confidence. Instead, if there is an open problem, there's a whole subject to work on that the teacher can work a little bit more, and so he can build more of their self-confidence. Is that the way I understood? Is it correct?
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm promoting the problem-solving approach, because it can help students build their confidence through the positive experiences, and open problems allow even weaker students have an insight that is kind of making progress in the task, and gives them a feeling that they are able to achieve something, and that kind of helps them their self-concept developing. So open-ended problems are not black and white in the feedback, but there's also more area for more of the students to find that they have at least partially succeeded. They have been able to do some progress with the task, and that's helping them to not build their self-concept stronger, but to keep their positive self-concept. I emphasize here that we see in mathematics that almost all the students start with very positive self-concept, and the progress that happens in school is that for some students the self-concept is dropping, and what we want to see is that the self-concept remains high enough for students to think about their future, possibly including studying more mathematics. Maybe I might also comment on the international comparison. There's lots of difference how realistic students are in their self-concept. So the correlation is in all countries between self-concept and achievement, but it's not in all countries very high. So Finland has one of the strongest, and I think it's because we don't have streaming or stranding. So the classrooms are heterogeneous. So people get quite realistic understanding of their self-concept. In some other countries, high achieving school students are collected in their own classrooms, and they kind of get harder competition. And then, if you collect only the best students in one class, so the weakest student in that class might start thinking that he's not a math person, because he or she is comparing always with other students who are even more successful than he is. Any other questions about that?
No, not now.
Thank you. So one more thing I want to highlight here, which is nice open question for someone to start working on, is that we see enjoyment there. And when we were talking about mathematical problem solving, enjoyment seemed to be playing very strongly there. But in this longitudinal development, whether people like mathematics or not seems to be not influencing their future achievement or the development of their self-concept. So why is enjoyment in mathematics not related to these other things in the longitudinal development? So an open question. I don't have an answer to that. Someone should do research on that issue. Okay, now I'm going to move to more theoretical part of presentation. So I was first kind of showing some examples of empirical research, and then I'm going to go to theory. How about the time? Should I finish at about past? Is that the target, or maybe earlier?
Yeah, you can keep going on. Yeah. Half hour.
So we have some time for discussion at the end.
Yeah.
Very good. I think I'm going to make quite nicely to that time point. So research on affect has identified, so I was giving first you example of emotions and attitudes, and there's also research on beliefs. Self-beliefs are also there, so it's sometimes hard to say what is attitude and what is belief, but MacLeod's work has been very influential in our field. and that's something that this distinction between identifying emotions, attitudes, and beliefs has been very strongly in the field. And emotions are kind of most intensely stable, and beliefs are mostly cognitive, more stable than the other things, and they are least intense. That's a kind of framework that has been used a lot. We analyzed how research on affect has been developing in the CIEspMat conference, which is the European Mathematics Education Conference that has been organized every second year. And there has been a topic group on affect since CIEspMat 3, that was in 2003, and the CIEspMat 10 was in 2017, was it? And there's been CIEspMat 11, but I didn't count that in the list because we did that earlier. So anyway, we found that there has been a bit more papers in this field, so it has been attracting more researchers. But the interesting development has been in the number of affect terms that has been appearing in the papers. So there's been, like, the last CIEspMat that was in the list had 24 papers on affect, and they used 21 different emotion terms in the titles alone. So there's this development in affect research that there are lots of concepts that are being used. So in CIEspMat 3 it was attitudes, beliefs, motivation, emotion, and I don't remember what was maybe self-efficacy was one, but that was the things that appeared there. So there's lots of kind of more narrow concept field. Later on there's been identity, boredom, lots of detailed words for emotions. And if we start from the MacLeod's identification that there's cognition, motivation, and emotion, something that shows in research, and I'm now skipping a little bit, so if you want me to focus more deeply on that, I can talk about that, but identifying a state and trait type of that. So in emotion, that's, I think, the easiest to understand. So the student can have an emotional state that's what I was talking, that during the problem solving process, both successful and non-successful students can have both negative and positive feelings. So there can be a moment of frustration, there can be a moment of curiosity, there can be a moment of aha, and so forth, and those are kind of changing rapidly. So the states are this dynamic shifts from one emotional feeling to another. But trait is more more stable thing that is captured often in surveys. So whether a student has anxiety, that's something that tends to repeat from lesson to lesson. And if another student is enjoying mathematics, that seems to be also rather stable. So there's this dynamic state and then more stable trait. And I'm saying in this meta theory that we can have in the same kind. Sorry, I now have to correct myself. I was saying that this is the same as with MacLeod's. This is actually not the same because I brought motivation as a separate one. So if emotion we can identify as state and trait, and then the cognition, which is in the affect side, the cognition means beliefs, self-beliefs, self-efficacy, but also beliefs about nature of mathematics, beliefs about efficient learning, and so forth. There can be also state and trait. There can be, they are more typically state, but it can be, they are not more typically trait type cognitions. People tend to believe, but there can be also some local dynamically changing states about problem solving. So for example, one can start to solve a problem thinking, oh, this is a geometry problem. But working on it realizes, oh, this is actually more probability than geometry. And that's kind of a belief thing. Or it can be that there can be a state, a self-belief that, okay, this is a type of mathematics that I'm good in. And it can be replaced, oh, actually, this is not a kind of mathematics I'm good in. This is not something that I'm successful. And the third area is something that I kind of took it from MacLeod as a separate one, because he was mentioning as part of beliefs that there are also motivational beliefs. And that was something that I thought that deserves own identification, because emotions are about how people are feeling and cognitions are about what people think is true. Then motivation is what people want. And there are things that are kind of state-like, rapidly changing, that the person can find in a situation, let's say again, a problem solving, that they can think that, okay, I want to know this sub part of the question first. I want to have a solution there. Or in a collaborative problem solving, there can be states related to goals about the problem, but it can be also motivational states about the group. Okay, I haven't been working with these peers before. I hope they accept me as a active participant and they include me in their group. And if that is fulfilled, if the group is welcoming the new person, then maybe some other things come more to the surface. Or it can be the other way around. They start working as a group and a person is having motivational states about the task, but then some of the peers start bullying in the problem-solving situation, and then the motivational state shifts so that the social goal becomes more central. And again, there are also the motivational trait, and I already mentioned the goal orientation. So a student can have a motivational trait to focus on understanding thoroughly what learning. It could be a performance motivation trait that they want to be successful in assessment, and they want to show their peers that they are better than the others in mathematics. So this is the kind of the starting point, but what I also identified that this doesn't capture all the research literature very well. And I was kind of forced to take a third dimension, because there are different types of research. There is research, brain research or neurophysiology or the bodily research, especially in emotions, but also in motivation, there's some brain research that is looking at how things look in the physiology of the body. Most of the research is on the psychological level that I've been referring to, but there's also lots of research in the social level. So there's about the norms in the classroom. There's about building positive classroom climates. There's about negotiating goals in a group. And this research that approaches from the social approach doesn't really match well. So each of these could be addressed as something happening in the body and brain, or something happening in the mind, or something happening in the social environment. And this is the kind of framework that has allowed me to identify how different studies and different fields of research are related to each other. And it took me actually less than I expected, but any questions here?
So just make clear, embodied is something that is in the physiological level.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this would be the end of my presentation. So I'm now welcoming questions to kind of develop this discussion more deeply. I understood there should be some time for discussion at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for your nice talk and your presentation. At least for me, I'm not in this subject of researching, so for me it was very nice, and I'm learning a little bit. So I'm going back. I myself am going to make some comments and questions about this attitude of emotions for the students, and there is this attitude of very hard working, and for some of the students that they do that out of a fear for somehow.
Mm-hmm.
How does this affect the students' achievement? Is there research about that? And what can you tell us?
Okay, that kind of research has been addressed a lot in mathematics educational research. There's tons of research on how math anxiety is negatively influencing mathematics learning. So the fear is part of the anxiety concept. So anxiety is a fear and worry about failing and having negative consequences because of that. And it works in many ways. It deteriorates cognitive processing. So part of the research where it has been studied is in the physiological part, and they have shown that it kind of takes over the working memory. It overloads working memory, and it biases memory also. So person who is anxious sees threats around them. So it biases attention. So they see threatening information. So let's say a teacher at the front is saying something. So an anxious student might be more likely to interpret that thing as something that is maybe ridiculing just that student, or commenting that student's poor performance, or maybe what the teacher is telling about future test. An anxious student is more likely to interpret that in a way that makes them worried about the test. So the teacher could be just telling neutrally something about that there is going to be exam the following week, And an anxious student might read the facial expressions, how the teacher is looking at them, that oh, it's going to be a very difficult test. And if the teacher is looking at this anxious student, the student is thinking, oh, now the teacher is thinking that I'm going to fail that test. So a high level of anxiety relates to a lot of this kind of internal monologue about failure and worry. And that takes away lots of mental energy. So it's very tiring for the student, and they are not able to focus on research because they have so much going on that psychological level.
Okay. Also, there's another question: is about the terminology. The names used to refer to emotions has been changing over time. What are the reason for those changes, and are the main changes that focus on annotations leading to such a change? I mean, why so many names and terminologies that has going on? Oh, you have this sequence of papers on CERM, so why?
Mm-hmm. So part of this is in a way related to the development of the field. So instead of looking only at generally emotions in problem solving, people are looking at more specifically about, let's say, boredom in classroom, or student enjoyment in problem solving, or some other specific emotions like hope as part of classroom emotions, or like there are lots of different details in emotions. So for example, there's like a framework by Reinhard Pekrun about achievement related emotions, identifies 8 different emotions that are related to learning outcomes, either being successful or failing learning. And that's something that is related to the addition of terminology. There's also the part that I mentioned about the social theories coming into mathematics. So when you talk about the social level of the group, so when you talk about emotional climate in the classroom, you need to use slightly different terminology than if you are just talking about emotions of the individuals. There's discussion, like there are some terminology that relates to identifying the social level. So there's the identity of the students, which comes from social theories. There's norms in the classroom, classroom climate, and things like that. So those are kind of 2 rather natural ways of doing. But there's also that people are looking for literature more broadly, and they are finding ideas, new ideas. Like in 2003, I think most math education researchers were very strongly influenced by MacLeod's framework, and there was very little work other than that. And there's been now more influence coming from motivation theories, coming from emotion theories, coming from social theories and embodied theories, and these also include new terminology. So it's kind of the enrichment of the field. So it's not just based on a single paper that has been influential, but they are drawing from many different sources, and that's kind of allowing fruitful discussion. But it also kind of requires that we have to find it, like, okay, these 21 different terms, how do they relate to each other? And I think that's the reason that pushed me to the building of the meta theory.
Okay, there's also a general question, but I think it's related to your talk. Finland is one of the countries that people looking at as a good example for education in several subjects, including mathematics. do you, and also since you are president of PME and know all the other countries, you see, and why is that the difference that people showing up in Finland, or how is it just related with the emotions that the teachers in Finland dealing with their students?
So, yes, I think one of the things that I'm really proud about in Finland is that, like, the achievement level that is higher than OECD average. It's no longer the top one, but it's still higher than the average, and it's like not as high as it used to be. Is related with high level of well-being in classroom. So Finnish students are having very low levels of anxiety and very high level of well-being. So I think that's a nice combination. They are doing well in school, they are learning, and they are feeling good about themselves. There are some things that could be developed in Finland. So, for example, there are quite few people who are kind of excited about mathematics or science, who are really eager and they are wanting to make that a career. So math and science are not so exciting, and then I think one of the things in Finnish system is that there's been for a long time this student-centered approach in Finland that is kind of not actually in reality in the classroom. It's not very student-centered, but it's student caring, I would say, maybe, and especially kind of there is no punishment or ridiculing of students. I think that's something that's been very good progress in Finland, that there is not this kind of joking about failure in an inappropriate way, and things like that have been developing very nicely in Finland. So I think those are related to low levels of anxiety, high well-being, and above OECD average on achievement. Maybe I could make a comment about the achievement, because there's this kind of natural trend almost that anyone who is above average tends to decline, and anyone who is below average tends to get higher. So that's also developed in Finland, but it's been development in all countries that have been above average, that their development has been declining. So it's very hard to stay on the top.
Well, that's a very mathematical also statement, because it's the tendency to go to the average, right? If you go up, the trend is going to the average. There's another question is, most of their talk were about students' emotions. What about teachers' emotions?
Mm-hmm. Right. So if you think, look about what influences student enjoyment in classroom, one of the strongest findings there is that the teacher emotions influence student enjoyment. So if a teacher is excited about what they teach, if they feel good in their classroom, then the students are also going to like their lessons. So that's one thing that's clearly there. The other thing is, especially if you go to elementary levels, where teachers are not always very competent in mathematics, you could see, and you do see, it's well established in research, there are quite a lot of teachers in lower grades, in elementary level, who have math anxiety, who have low self-concept, and that's definitely influencing the way they treat mathematics in their classrooms. For example, many students avoid problem solving because they find it too challenging, because their own math competencies are not good enough. They are afraid of student solutions that are non-standard, because they don't understand what the student solution means and whether it's right or wrong, and they are not confident about handling these. So definitely there is this teaching anxiety and teaching efficacy that are at play on the level of how teachers run their classrooms. Especially the efficacy beliefs influence a lot what kind of teaching approaches teachers are willing to try out in their classroom. So a teacher with low efficacy is less likely to try a new approach.
Another question is related to not for basic educational level, but higher education level. And since this is my environment, I wonder if there is any what do we say, suggestion or changing of attitude of professors and teachers there or lecture their students in higher education, because it's very common, especially here in Brazil, for our colleagues. Well, I would say not make a joke about the bad performance of students, but at least sometimes make some kind of not good comments, and also even use the fear emotions to make them to study or something. Do you have any kind of for higher education as well?
Unfortunately, I don't think I have any good answers there. It is true that it's highly, like, emotions are highly relevant, especially at the transition to the university. Students who begin their university studies are often kind of, their self-concept is fragile. It's very common thing to happen at the beginning of mathematics studies, that people realize that I thought I was strong in mathematics, but actually I suck. I think that's the experience of many people at the university level, and the way teaching is done definitely influences it. I think there's also in the tradition of mathematics is something that the process of creating mathematics is not shown so much, but the final polished product is the one that is shown. So yeah, I think there's this joke about a math professor who is during his lecture saying that, and then it's a trivial proof that from this follows the next statement, and then the student asks, I don't understand this trivial proof, can you explain? Is it trivial? I think it's challenging there. The professor looks at the thing and stays there 5 minutes, leaves the lecture room, comes 10 minutes later back and says, yes, I checked it, it's trivial. And I think that this thing that mathematics is always presented as the final form, the very polished form, is making it very hard for students to understand the process of doing mathematics, and that relates to the kind of emotions as part of the process. So if there is lots of struggling included in doing mathematics, then it's related also to that it's natural to feel frustrated as part of the process. It's part of doing mathematics that you get disappointed at some points, and learning to live with these kind of emotions might be a new situation for many students who have been until then finding everything easy. So learning how to struggle, it would be a very important thing that the mathematics professors show, that every mathematician is struggling with new ideas. And only after you got the idea, it's clear and nice. I think it's, who was it? Was it Hadamard who said this metaphor about working with a mathematical new area? It's like going into a dark house, and you go inside there. During the night, you don't see anything. You feel a little bit here. You start to make sense of where the rooms are, where the doors are. Then you find the door to the cellar, and then there you find the main switch and you put the lights on. That's when the mathematical theorem becomes clear. And then everything is lit and everything is clear. But the whole process until finding that moment is stumbling in the dark. And mathematicians don't share that experience with their students typically. They just show the fine mansion where everything is lit and everything is clear, but they don't show how they had to struggle to find the switch, or how the mathematician originally had to struggle to find the main switch in the basement.
Yeah,
I think I'm rambling a bit.
Yeah,
away from your question.
But you know, I myself sometimes try to make this whole process of getting to the final answer very clear to the students. But then I came up with another problem. Sometimes it's bored. They are getting bored because it's a long process. So the challenge is both ways. We have to also not only show the light room, but also all the struggles. Sometimes showing the struggles, sometimes showing the illuminated. I think it's kind of have to make some balance to keep students even sometimes challenged, but not bored. There's some challenging. I like that flow framework that you showed that. Well,
yeah. I think one thing that you could think in the university level thing is how the students can develop their agency, ownership, and identity. So they are not just passively receiving and repeating what they are given, but they become mathematicians in the education.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, I guess we don't have more questions over there or shy students. We are about 12 right now. Well, I think we're going to end our talk with Professor Markku Hannulla. We thank very much for your time with us, and this talk is going to be recorded in the CIEspMat site of Professor Miguel Ribeiro, and then people can enjoy your teachings and your talk a little bit more.
So thank you, Samuel, for being the host. Thanks, Miguel, for inviting me. It's been exciting thing. And just to share of the local flavor a little bit, my friend is visiting my place, so he has been heating the sauna. So I'm going to enjoy sauna, and the lake is quite cold. It was last time 7 degrees, but I was still swimming. So let's see if I manage to get in this time.
Okay. Well, enjoy the remaining of your summer over there.
Yeah, summer is over. This is well into fall.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you. Goodbye.